Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett, and today I'm going to get into MIMO and why this is important to note and why you should know this for getting a new router. And this could be for mesh networks or regular Wi-Fi routers. Notes for mesh networks, this is a very common thing to have due to the nature. If you want to know about mesh networks, I got videos on that out of both ends. So as far as that goes, MIMO, that is multi-in, multi-out. And I'm going to be using this as an example because it's really good. There's no way I can compete with this, so let's use the what's already out there for the public. So as far as things goes, multi-in, multi-out, and then you got MU and SU. MU is multi-users. SU is single user. The over here is a single user. Basically, what happens here is you got like the normal thing where it goes down the list. It tosses the first one and goes down the list to 2, 3, 4, and it goes back to 1. And it doesn't mean that they're all streaming. Basically, it's just seeing if it's there. So let's say that they're fairly idle. It's just, the Wi-Fi is still there, but it's idle. Basically, what would end up happening is the access points or the home Wi-Fi router, which has an access point into it, it will communicate to each device and see if it's still there. That way, it knows to keep the IP address association or should it drop the IP address, because there is a limited amount of devices that can connect to the router. And it's fairly important to note, say, do I got any free spaces, and let's drop some of these devices so we can actually, free some space. Because keep in mind, let's say if that device disconnects and tomorrow it reconnects, well, now it will say that you got 5 devices, and since it's not checking all the time. So with the MU, basically what happens here is this is a 4x4, and that basically means that we're, instead of talking to one device at a time, this talks to 4 devices at a time. And this is fairly important because this talk to one device at a time, this let's say one of them is like a slow phone or slow IP camera or something like that slows down the entire network for that. So just note that. Whereas the this technically doesn't. So what happens here is since we got a 4x4, say we'll talk to 4 devices at a time. Now the as far as things go, let's just imagine this is a 2x2. So take away 2 of these connections. Keep the phones, but take away 2 of the connections. So it will only talk to 2 at the same time. It will still have to do this little thing. Now, let's say that, just hypothetical reasons, and keep in mind realistically, it'll be in milliseconds for it to talk to one device. But let's just say hypothetical reasons. For it to talk to these 4 phones, each phone is 1 second, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And what would end up happening is by using this method, it takes about, for this phone to talk, then it goes to the next. For it to hear anything back, it will take 4 seconds. Well, let's say that this is a 2x2. Basically, what would end up happening is it'll be just 1 second, because it talks to these 2, then it goes talks to these 2, then it goes back up here and talks to these 2. So it quickens it up by a massive amount. Now, where the MU comes in, this is fairly important. Where the stuff comes in, MIMO, ABC 1, 2, 3. Where it comes in is basically some devices have the ability to allow this. Basically, there's a study of, I think, about 6,000 some odd devices, And basically, and this is between Android phones, iPads, computers, and other things. 50% of the devices has a 1x1, and notes that 4x4 just means they got 4 devices. 1x1 is it's this basically. But 30% of those devices had 2x2, and 20% had a 3x3. Well, here's the thing. Here's the kicker. So, if you have the ability on the phones, so like the 2x2 and 3x3, basically what that means is, let's say that two of these phones are out, and the other two is the 2x2 enabled. Well, basically what ends up happening is, since these two phones are not existing, just in your mind, just imagine that. Well, the other two, those channels that could be used because it's a 4x4 device, well, basically they are not being used and it's waste. So if these phones are 2x2 enabled, basically what would end up happening is the access point, it will the phone will tell the access point, hey, I'm 2x2 enabled. So what would end up happening is it'll associate one of these tracks to one phone and the other track to another phone. So both phones have two tracks, and this actually increases the overall speeds and stuff up to a point. So a common analogy some network developers use is basically this is like sucking on a straw every few seconds, and something like this. It's like sucking on a straw, one straw is continuously. But when you just add the extra track, that's like putting two straws and your drink quickly goes down. Physics is a bitch, and that says that's completely false. The analogy is just stupid. You only have so much vacuum power, and given that the straw is wide enough, or you got enough, eventually gets to the point where you're only going to be able to suck up so much, and you can put 500 straws there, and most likely your max is probably at, I don't know, 2 or 3, and I don't know, whatever it might be, depending on the size of the straw. And basically, it's whatever. But as far as this purpose, basically all it means is these extra tracks, it speeds it up by a tremendous amount. Now, as far as things goes for devices, it's best to look at a spec sheet. So you get sites like this that actually does a teardown on devices, and I'm going back and forth between the Google Wi-Fi and this Unify. I might end up just going with Google Wi-Fi. I'm going back and forth, and probably make a video on it. But basically, what Google Wi-Fi is, it with the mesh network and whatever, it is a 2x2. It's a 2x2 multi-user. I don't know if and this is important to note. Even though that this says multi-user, even though it says this, I don't know if that's enabled. There is a chance that it's not. There's a chance on some products the company has it where it can do it, but it's just not enabled. Now, from what I'm able to gather, this is actually enabled. Some people actually has the ability to test this crap out, and did test it out on a very specific level. I think it was here or somewhere else. They found it actually does use it. The average person wouldn't be able to test it out. They probably won't even notice a difference. But as far as that goes, it's fairly important to note that hardly any device actually uses this. So it's just very important to note with that. But even still, that this is what you'll see in a spec sheet is something here, where if you look at a 2.4 gigahertz radio, you'll see a times 2, or right here is a 2 by 2, 2 times, or 2 by 2, and so it's like if it's a 3, we'll say 3 by 3 or 4 by 4, and all that means is basically it's antennas and the hardware ability to do it, and software if it allows it on the software side. But for this, it basically has a 2 by 2 for the 5 gigahertz and a 2 by 2 for the 2.4 gigahertz. So basically, it's this subtracted by these two. Now, the interesting thing with the UniFi is, even though it says 4 by 4, the advanced versions of the stuff tends to be the 4 by 4. The mesh network stuff that I'm looking at is 2 by 2. The ones I can afford is 2 by 2. So that's why I'm not sure which one I want to go to. There's not too much difference between the two the more I'm looking at it. So besides price, but as far as that goes, that's just something to note. Again, this is just something that you want to note. Most devices don't use the you only got so many devices that is a 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 4 by 4, or whatever. But the fact is you would actually need to note that it has this type of ability for some mesh network. Why? Well, for a mesh network, basically what happens is, if you don't know what a mesh network is, I got plenty of videos on it. But basically what it says is how many access points it's able to talk to at a single point of time. So even if it's not talking to any actual device besides other access points, how many of those other access points is it able to talk to at one point? So if you're doing like a shopping mall or something like that, or something very large area, there's a fairly good chance that one of the access points are not going to be used hardly ever. But it can be in a very critical point where you can have 3 or 4 access points go through it almost simultaneously, almost all the time. So it's useful in that aspect to note that on an enterprise level. For home, I say if it's a 3 by 3, great. If it's a 2 by 2, it's good enough. Honestly, again, most devices simply are not above 2 by 2s, and even at that, most devices are 1 by 1, which you ain't gonna be able to use it. And many network engineers will tell you that the some of this is worthless. Like with this, a lot of people will tell you it's on the downlink, and with that, it's worthless. The device has to have the ability and stuff like that. So for that, I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. But when you're buying it, you need to keep that in the back of your mind. So that could be maybe the breaking thing of you buying one device versus another. So as far as that goes, if you've got any questions, anything else, then feel free to let me know, and I'll try to answer as quickly as possible in the comment section or wherever else. And feel free to email me if you want to keep it private and whatever. Just let me know if you're okay with me to show your name, whatever. But anyways, as far as that goes, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next video. Hope you have a great day.